What's up, Malphas? It's your boy Malphas. I'm looking cute, looking clean, looking sexy. And of course, I'm joined with the House of D legend himself, Afro Coming 765. How you doing today, Tori?
You already know. Same stuff, different day. Local neighborhood scumbag here to give the folks their daily dose of dragons.
Yes, getting some dragons talk. One thing I want to talk about this show before we get into the episode, and we're just gonna go over some random things before we get into the episode, was Alicent looked way up, like they looked like she aged 3 years. Rhaenyra did not. No. I'm like, she did not.
Okay, not to be the perv here, but her bust size did increase from the last episode. Not even trying to be funny, but that was the only noticeable change that I saw. But I did also notice, I don't know if anyone else noticed this just might be my weird, but I'm pretty sure they pushed back Viserys' hairline. I'm fairly sure. I know it sounds funny, but I'm being serious. After we're done here, I'm gonna go back and look at episode 2 and compare it to episode 3. But I'm fairly sure they pushed back his hairline a little bit.
So next Sunday we will get an update from Tori on if it is true. Did they push back his hairline? But another thing I wondered about, because I did get this far in the book, they kind of ended this war very well.
I thought that's what, like I said last episode, the way they're doing these time skips, I sort of understand why they had to sort of shorten the War of the Stepstones, but might be a hot take. This might be the best piece of Game of Thrones related content we've gotten since season 6. Yeah, for real.
Season 7 got
7 and 8 were trash. I mean, it is what it is.
8, we don't even want to talk about 8. They didn't even care no more.
8 was just bad. But this episode also reinforced the thought that I had that they should have just put the first 2 episodes together and made it like some super long 2-hour premiere. But this episode did a really good job in certain aspects, which we'll get into. But also, I love how we're doing these openings. This one sort of showed I've noticed each of the openings have told like a different story from the history of the 7 kingdoms. And just like with last week's episode, we got the bloody family tree. This week's episode, we started off in old Valyria. We saw the proverbial fall of Valyria, and then it basically showed the route that Aegon the first, not the baby, the first Aegon, the path he took when he left old Valyria, crossing over the sea and taking over 6 of the 7 kingdoms. It was sort of, I mean, it was his battle campaign marked in blood. As long as they keep on giving us these little tidbits, I'm all for it, man. Anything to expedite lore in ways that people don't expect, I'm with it.
Yeah, they sped through this, but it didn't feel bad even from reading.
Yeah, but also they added a lot of stuff, because like I said, where the books, I mean, you have to add certain stuff in where we're getting it from the events from a whole new point of view.
Laenor, that's one thing I noticed. Laenor added a lot of depth.
Yeah, and we'll get more of that as the series goes on. Shout out to Laenor and Sea Smoke though, MVPs. But
I absolutely love that scene at the end. It got hype at the end. I'm like, okay, this show getting it. One thing this show does better than Ring of Power, before I'm gonna let Tori finish. Ring of Power is the most beautiful show I've ever seen in my life, Tori.
I've heard a lot of people say that the cinematography is next level.
It is so long. The first 2 episodes, I did a review. I was like, we barely see any of the characters because it's 2 hours of.
But that's why I never really got into reading Tolkien though, because he had this really long, drawn out way of telling stories. And I mean, I'm all for super in-depth detail, but man, you don't have to push every sentence into a paragraph with freaking descriptors that half of us don't even know.
Yeah. it's insane how, bro, it's like you see the beauty and they just show the beauty all the time. But I'm like, bro, I don't know nothing about Galadriel yet. 2 episodes, I still don't understand her. Like, we got that she, even though this ain't a review of that show, I just want to compare it to this show and why this show is killing it for me. Even though I think that show has potential because I can watch beauty all day. But hopefully episode 3 is like the end of episode 3, getting to the story that I remember a little bit. If you know anybody know about Second Age, I'm a Lord of Rings nerd. If you know about, like, Tori's like the Game of Thrones Lord nerd. I am the Lord of the Rings nerd.
Well, see,
Morgoth and the whole
Lord of the Rings
Second Age
knowledge is very much pre-age. Like, once we get to talking about the creation of Middle Earth, we can talk about Iluvatar and the Myanmar and the Ainur and all the different gods that made. Because one thing I'll give Tolkien is that he did his lore right. Like, the Silmarillion, even though it's not a finished book, just the fact that he took the time to lay out how Iluvatar made Middle Earth and how freaking Morgoth went to be in Sauron after freaking Tolkien came through and beat the holy piss out of him.
Yeah. It was cool seeing King Gilgalad. If you know the story. Like, cause you only hear him like in lore or somehow he beat. That's a whole nother story.
But I feel like the lore is almost better than the goddamn actual story when it comes to anything Tolkien's written.
But this show, comparing to this show, I care about Rhaenyra. And I'm up here upset that I'm seeing on Twitter, Alicent is trending right now because everybody is like, how dare she think she's a friend of Rhaenyra after doing what she did? I'm like, that's investment in the characters.
Yeah.
That's like the two differences.
And it's only gonna, that's the thing. I can't wait until this show, because like I said, the way we're going through it, I think this first season will probably end as Aegon, the baby born, we'll talk about it once Aegon starts to come of age and freaking once his brothers are around, which will lead into the conflict of Black and Green, which will probably be, if not the season 2 finale, probably season 3. I'm thinking they might get 3 seasons out of this, because it was technically 3 short novels that made up this whole story that they're telling. So I figure 3 seasons. But they've done like I said, they've done such a good job just in these not even short, in this period of time that they're showing us. Like, there's so much symbolism in it, which believe me, once we get into the episode, there's just so much. But as well as so many callbacks, so many references to things that will technically happen in Game of Thrones proper, as we saw. But they've done a really good job, and the pacing's not as cringy as I thought it was going to be with having to do multiple time skips. But yeah, this could be a winner. So far, in my opinion, these episodes have went 3 for 3. There's been 3. All 3 of them have been good, even though I still feel like you should have just shoved 1 and 2 together.
Yeah. Let's get into the episode now. I know the people are waiting. We just want to give our thoughts. I want to compare it to another show I'm reviewing because, like I said, this show has good graphics and stuff, but it's not nowhere near the other show. But the storyline is so crisp because I care about the character. Yeah. Well, so far I'm just saying, but
bro, it's a Tolkien story. The characters aren't going to get that much better. I hate to tell you.
Well, the book is okay, but it's slow. It's slowly going. You know how this show is speeding through a little bit at a good pace? That show is just like, yo, we're finna go through like the book exactly saying. I'm like, bro, that book take a little while to get into.
Like you said, man, and Lord of the Rings, even the trees fucking walk. So it's just a slow going.
Yeah. But we're gonna start the show off. We see the crab people treating people like Jesus, Tori. They crucify.
Yep, Crabfeeder out there freaking nailing hands to crosses and waiting for the tide to roll in.
Of course, I'll spit in Prince Dayhar's face if he treat me like this. He letting the crabs eat him and everything. Daemon shows up with the dragon, our first dragon action.
Yeah, Caraxes come through.
Yeah. The dragon even stumped dude that was asking for help, which is Easter egg.
Yeah, I thought that was so good though. Just him thinking he was gonna be saved, and then you just see Caraxes Talon come in, and you know it's over. You're like, oh,
yeah. But you see Easter egg. You see him later on in the show, the same dude after after like he's rotted. It's the same dude because you can tell because of what it's like a little thing he had around his neck, a little green thing or something.
Yeah.
It was the only thing left. It was green. I'm like, that's a cool callback. But we saw how destructive the dragon was.
Yeah, I mean, Caraxes is no joke. I mean, they don't call him the bloodworm for no reason. You know what I mean? He is probably, I'd say right now, he is probably the most battle-hardened dragon out of the 15 or so dragons that we'll get in this show. Because Velaryon, the Black Dread's already dead. That was the dragon skull in the under the keep in episode 2. But right now, Caraxes is probably the only dragon that's seen actual combat in some time. Well, I guess by the time we get to the end, Sea Smoke's seen some too, so.
Yeah. We see Daemon. He's asking for Drahar as Drahar running off through these tunnels that they're using to avoid the dragons. Like they're like, yo, if we just fight in the open, this dragon's gonna crush us. But they actually we found out a little bit that they are actually losing the war because they can't like find a way to get them all out. So it's like hard, and then they fight in these little combined spaces.
Guerrilla tactics, yo.
Yeah. So they have to go into the little combined spaces and then fight, and they ain't really good at that because they used to fighting with dragons and being in the open. So it's very smart strategy. I like the strategy. And we see Daemon get hit with a flaming arrow, which was kind of cool. He got hit with a flaming arrow.
He got caught with I love the fact that he got caught with those arrows. And then if you look later on in the episode, the armor he's wearing still has the holes from the arrows. I thought that was a really good touch.
It's detailed, unlike season 8. Lord of the Rings. That had a Sprite can on his shoulder that he was drinking while he was riding that thing. So I'm glad that.
But one thing I can say, I did get a Battle of the Bastards feel out of this episode a little bit. Nothing that grand, but like just certain points during the whole war in the Stepstones, like when Daemon does his fearless charge that we'll get into. There were a lot of. You compare it to the Jon Snow scene, it makes some sense.
It does. We go back. We realize at this time that we had a time skip because the first one didn't quite give you. Yeah, you didn't quite know. But Viserys has a boy. His name is Aegon. He is 2 years old, which automatically gave you the thing for 3 because it's gonna at least take 9 months to have the baby. So
and plus, Alicent's pregnant again.
Yeah, so
as well.
So you knew it was gonna take time. So. A 3-year time skip, you kind of had it. It didn't tell you to lay on, but you kind of guessed it because of the situation. But we see powerful people. They trying to convince Otto to. You got to convince him that Aegon should be it because all the men of the realm want Aegon to be the king, the male heir. He has a big second birthday party where all the men of the realm, except for of course the Velaryons, are all there, and they're having this big celebration. But it's a man asking for help.
It's the King's Hunt. They usually do it around any heir's birthday, sometimes funerals, depending on who died. But there's a lot of symbolism that went into this episode just around that, the whole King's Hunt in general.
Yeah. We see they have the King's Hunt. They even mentioned, they kind of hint at the legendary stag. Like, hey,
the white hart.
One. Yeah, we might find the legendary stag here. So they hinted that. We see that Viserys is dumb in 3 years. He has.
Oh, for people who don't know, the white hart, the stag that they're looking for, was in legend the original king of the gods. Well, the kings would before the dragons came. Which, I mean, if you tie that into Game of Thrones proper, as the Baratheons sit the throne, their house sigil is the stag. The stag was the original king of the jungle, I guess, proverbially, forest, whatever you want to call it. But like I said, so many little hints of lore and tying stuff together in this episode. Super dope.
Yeah, they explain to him the situation that's going on. He's ignoring it. He's looking for like, where's Rhaenyra? I don't care what my brother and these discontents did on their own, doing something without my. I don't want to help them. Where's Rhaenyra again? Where's Rhaenyra? They keep telling them about it. Daemon appears to be trying to win this war basically solo, which is not working out. So he's trying to win this war solo. They losing valuable resources to people because they can't get a good grip on them.
Yeah. Corlys' ships are taking heavy damage.
Yeah. And they losing, even though this makes Viserys look stupid because they losing valuable ports.
Yeah. Like, what people don't realize is that the Velaryons, at least, and I don't think they've probably changed this in the show any, but in the book, the Velaryons are, Corlys Velaryon has the largest navy in the world, has control of almost every major seaport. They're arguably, outside of the Targaryens, the richest family in the realm at this point, like, bar none. They might honestly have more gold than the Velaryons.
Yeah. We clicked the switch to Rhaenyra. She listened to the same song over and over again about the princes and they're going to becoming king and stuff. And we see Alicent show up. They have this little argument over keeping him. He's staying or he going. The queen outranks the princess right now, even though she's the heir of the throne, but she outranks her right now. And I'm like, and the first thing I'm asking is, imagine you still think you could be my friend after you like marry my parents.
As you have my half brother in your stomach.
As you were my best friend before. And you marry my father without telling me anything, just like, oh, I like him. Or
like I like this adds a lot. Because like I said, we never got this, like, this whole thing never happened in the book, this conversation that they're having. But I feel like it plays so much better in the show than it would have in the book because, like I've said before, the age difference in the book is like 10 years between Alicent and Rhaenyra. So they weren't friends. But
in the book, they're not friends. It's more like somebody that like watched out for her. Like
she was basically Rhaenyra's babysitter before.
That's what I'm saying. She was like the babysitter. They are together in a carriage. They enter in the kingdom. They go into the hunt. They're in a carriage. Of course, he brings up her having a son. He want to be a grandsire, as he said. And it brings up to the first episode, like, we are royal wombs. And you see this play through the whole episode, and Rhaenyra is like, I'm not for this. I'm not for this at all. So they're going on,
which is building to such amazing, like, man. Like this episode is essentially like the first block in the house that we're building that will eventually be the War of Black and Green.
Yeah. We see they go to the event. They doing what they do, eating and drinking and gossiping. You see, Lady Sarah is messy. These old lady and Bessie talking about, oh, the king looks weak. He's gonna have to help his brother because the kingdom is looking weak, and we losing valuable ports. And sooner or later, he's gonna have to do something. Yeah. And they all doing their little gossipy thing, like old ladies do.
This episode does a really good job of showing you, and if you're paying attention, I feel like this episode has done such a good job to show why Viserys should not be king.
It really does.
Like, bruh, because like this whole episode, even though there were only 2 episodes before this, it hammers home really every bad decision that he's made, from him sending his brother away to him choosing to save the stillborn child, instead of saving his wife. I mean, it's just this episode, and shout out to Paddy Considine, the guy that plays Viserys. He is just killing it. Like, but this episode really sort of slammed home. Even if they had left out all the talk of the people at court about how the king looks weak, I think this episode did a really good job of showing you how Viserys trying so hard to live up to freaking Jaehaerys' reign that came before him. Because honestly, Jaehaerys was the only king that's ever ruled in peaceful times. And I feel like Viserys feeling like he needs to live up to that is going to be his inevitable downfall. Like, the times are different. Jaehaerys was technically a freshly conquered kingdom. They were just coming off of the reign of Maegor the Cruel, arguably worse than the Mad King Aerys of Game of Thrones proper. So, I mean, the people were just happy the wars were over and there was a new king and freaking he was peaceful and he didn't want beef with anybody. He was ready to make peace with the Dornishmen. And Viserys is trying so hard to do that, but it's not working. You don't even got a dragon, bruh. Jaehaerys' old ass still had a dragon, even though he was the peaceful king.
Yeah. We have Jason Lannister. We get introduced to him. He's from Castle Rock.
Casterly Rock.
Casterly Rock. But he's like an important family. And basically the dad, Viserys kind of try to look, it's a political marriage. Maybe you want to talk.
If I'm not mistaken, Jason and his twin brother, whichever one of them it is, one of them is like, I think like the great or maybe just great grandfather of Tywin Lannister, which is Jaime and Cersei's dad.
Yeah. But he comes up, he's simping for Rhaenyra.
As he should. Because one thing people have to remember is at this point in time, the Lannisters are not this super wealthy family. They're not as high up on the totem pole as they were in Game of Thrones proper. Like, not remotely close. Because it's not until after Jason and his twin brother die, I'm pretty sure, whichever one of them is the great-grandfather, ends up having Tywin's father, Tywin Lannister, and he's really the one that brings Casterly Rock up to this prominent stature that we see in Game of Thrones proper. Like, they're doing such a good job of tying everything in. And that's why, if you guys look back to the first episode, I said if they do this show right, it could sort of fix some of the things that we hated about actual Game of Thrones. And I mean, so far so good. But I mean, just the progression, like as you were saying, with Jason coming in and asking for Rhaenyra's hand into the golden spear and all that. But yeah. It's just it's so cool the way they're tying in these little things.
Yeah. And we see this tension between Rhaenyra and Viserys. They go at each other in this scene. Otto comes Viserys down. He's getting a little drunk. He's yelling at her like, I didn't want to be married and they forced me to. I ain't above political. Why should you be in?
He loved his wife, yo, even though it was his cousin.
Then Jason Lannister goes to Viserys again, and drunk Viserys realized how annoying this dude is. He's like, okay, this dude is beyond annoying. He kind of bossed up when he got a little look at him. You noticed it? Yeah. He started talking a little tough, and voice got deeper. Oh, so you and your lords better make sure before you talk behind my back, you do know who I am. I'm like, oh, I ain't seen this in 3 episodes. What is it? All right, King.
Was this before or after? Was that before or after the scene where Clubfoot comes in? That was before.
Yeah.
When he comes in and when he sits down with the ladies, that was before that. Sorry,
yeah, it's about around the same time, but I think it might have been a little after that.
Yeah, but cool thing about Clubfoot that we might or might not learn later on, depending on how they go. Like I said, different points of view. When he sits with the ladies, because he's not good at hunting and he's not good at. So maybe it was before, because I think it was during the King's Hunt. But he is going to inevitably be the master of whispers. So it sort of shows how he can fit, how he doesn't mind sitting with the ladies. Because if you want to find out about powerful men, you listen to their wives. But I didn't just want to gloss over Clubfoot because he could play a super important role going forward, depending on how they use him. But yeah, Viserys gets drunk, thinks that, puts on his tough guy freaking. It was a nice little change, but man, Patty Constantine's such a good actor.
Yeah,
but
during this is drunkenness. Rhaenyra is out with Sir Christian. They doing on the little adventure.
Kristen Cole.
Yeah, she's trying to get away basically, and we come back to the scene. Otto, a wild boy. Otto offered the wildest. I'm like, okay, Lord, I ain't used to that.
Why you just marry her to the baby?
You're like, he's 2 and he's a brother.
Well, think, when Aegon conquered the 6 of 7 kingdoms, he did it with his 2 sister wives.
But like, how old were they though? Were they that much difference too? And
no. I think he would. I think Aegon the Conqueror was maybe 3 or 4, 5 years max older than his sisters. There wasn't.
So you got a lot of problems with this situation.
Honestly, I think Visenya, the one that had the sword Dark Sister that Daemon carries now, I think she might have actually been a year or 2 older than Aegon. Yeah. I think one sister was older than him, and then one sister was younger than him, but he tags them both. He didn't care.
But even though Viserys is drunk, he knows Otto is a wild boy.
Yeah.
He knows that Otto is a wild boy. He's like, yo, listen, that's crazy. I don't even know where I'm at right now. That is crazy what you saying.
Yeah. You thought you might get that off because I was drunk, but there ain't nothing that sobers you up quicker than talking about marrying your kids together.
Yeah, then they go out there. Like I said, he should have known that Otto was up to something weird, that he keep offering weird things. But they go out there. We go back to Rhaenyra and Sir Christian Cole, and a boar comes and attacks him. He knocked Christian way out. It jumps on top of Rhaenyra.
More symbolism because the boar attacks, and what kills Robert Baratheon to start off the proper Game of Thrones? He gets gored by a boar while he's out on a hunt.
Yeah, so it is symbolism. That sword, when Christian Cole stabbed him, got very close to his face. That was a cool visual.
Yeah, it was dope.
And then Rhaenyra gets on top of the boar and stabs it repeatedly, putting blood on a cool scene, good imagery. Like I keep saying, the imagery of Ring of Power. I don't want to keep bringing this up, but it's beautiful. But the imagery of just coolness and I want to care about this character is so valuable.
You just don't get it.
Yeah.
Because he writes everyone to be so detached from their settings. He's like, I'm gonna give you this beautiful setting that is Middle Earth and all, but I'm gonna give you the blandest characters I can.
Yeah. We see a scene where Viserys comes out after they have to kill him. Viserys come out, he's talking to Alicent, and he's like, did I make a mistake marrying you? Because I had this vision, and I've been hunted by this vision of my son running everything for so long that I thought if I just gave it to Rhaenyra, all my problems would go away.
And then you come birthing boys.
Yeah, and then now I got this problem, and it seems like all these problems are just keep coming back. And was it all a mistake? Everything I did, was it a mistake to undo? Was it a mistake to marry you or marry at all? And divorce children? Should I just let Rhaenyra do what she do and just let it go and say, forget all this? Because everybody was pressuring me because, again, they don't respect me.
Yeah, he's a people pleaser, and that's going to be Viserys' downfall. He's a people pleaser.
Rhaenyra even like, yo, listen, I ain't marrying nobody that I don't want to marry. And they talk about that later, but we're gonna get in a minute. They caught a stag, and oh my god, Tori, this man, even killing a stag, he looked weak.
Well, you got to remember the hand strength is different now. You know what I mean? Which is more symbolism. The golden spear that he used to kill the stag came from the Lannisters, and the Lannisters are essentially who killed the Baratheons, which their sigil is the stag. So it was some more symbolism. A golden spear from the Lannisters kills the stag that would be the Baratheons sitting on the throne. Super, super dope.
Yeah. We have, like, he took 2 shots. The dude went to the stag and said, "Sir, a little more to the left." And I'm like, and everybody got quiet. And I'm like, oh my god, this looks terrible for Viserys.
It was cringe.
It was. I'm like, everybody
good, it was good cringe though.
Yeah. But we go back to Rhaenyra. She's all blooded, looking cool, unlike her daddy. Which I think this show is symbolizing a lot. And a white stag appears before.
The actual white hart, which is said only to show itself to the rightful heir.
Yeah.
Well, the rightful king. No heir, but yeah.
Yeah. And Sir Christian getting ready to get his sword out. He's ready to go. And she's like, no.
Let it be.
It looked like he gave a little nod. I'm like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we come back. She comes back to the camp and she's all bloody and everybody just staring and she just walking like, I've been out here killing animals, dog. Like I've been doing work. And I'm like, the difference between her father looking weak and she looking like John Moxley in WWE. I mean, not WWE, in AEW.
AEW.
Yeah, the fact that she came and looked like that and walking back while everybody was amazed was incredible to me. It was some incredible imagery. We come back.
Work on this show.
Yeah. The father is talking to Rhaenyra. He says Valon is Corlys' brother. Said he's asked for help. And he was like, he's trying to get me to probably marry me, Rhaenyra. I don't want to talk to him. I don't care about this. And he's like, this is a sign for help. She gets on it. She start cooking them. She just telling them about, you didn't do none of this. You telling me to marry for political reasons. You would have married that little girl if it was for political reasons. You can't tell me the same thing. So he's getting cooked. He decides to finally be a father, which he has glimpses. He's like, hey, listen, I'm not finna leave you. You finna be here and marry who you want, but make sure he makes you look like a strong queen when I give you this throne.
Which not too long after this when Sir Robert Strong gives the wonderful Rhaenyra idea.
Yeah. And then he did something I think might cause conflict. He did the big thing. He promised on Rhaenyra's mother's honor that no one would supplant her from being an heir. Which kind of helps the relationship for the first time in 3 years. Yeah. But he makes this promise. I'm like, if you don't stick to that promise on her mother's honor, you're going to have issues.
Oh, and issues there will be.
You will have issues. You might have promised more than you can chew. You're a people pleaser, Viserys. You are a people pleaser. You just made a promise to your daughter that nobody will supplant her on her mother's honor, whom she know you love. So she believe you. She even smiled like, okay, we cool now. If you don't hold up to this.
I'm going to shoot Viserys some bail here. I believe he truly believed what he was saying when he said it.
I do too, but you can't take those words back. You cannot take those words back, my guy. Shout out to everybody watching. I hope everybody watching. What y'all think about the show? What y'all think about Viserys? What y'all think about Alicent and her relationship with her former best friend. It's a little different from the book. Instead of babysitter's best friend.
Oh, it's like,
This
it's
actually
different.
makes it
It's good though. It's good.
I think this actually makes it better because the babysitter, she has less anger toward the babysitter compared to what she would with the girl I grew up with. You know what I'm saying? So this adds a little heat to it. Usually shows don't add more heat. They try to take a little away for television.
Yeah, they try to
add a little heat.
Divvy it back some. But I think that goes into the way that they're having to do this show, where they're having to actually show it from a point of view that wasn't in the book. Of course, you have the book as a guideline to the important events, but all of these interpersonal interactions that they have, that's got to be from scratch because the people who tell the stories didn't see that.
We go to the battlefield for the first time. Well, for the first time since the beginning of the episode, and we see Rhaenyra.
Back in the Stepstones.
Yeah, they keep it natural because all his kids are either mixed and all his family is black. So his brother's black, his kids mixed. They like shows don't usually do that. So at least, even if you disagree with them being black, at least they kept it together. At least they kept the cohesive. Like you just didn't have a random white brother or nothing like that. So it kept
that would have been wild.
That would have been weird. So shout out to them for keeping cohesion, even if you didn't like it. We see Rhaenyra has a plan to bait the crab people. He needs somebody to go up there and bait them out. And they were like, "What?" His uncle Valor was like, "What idiot or what fool who going to their death to go out there and try to bait them out?" He like Daemon, of course. Daemon kind of hears it. He come back in the dragon. But Corlys tell his brother he won't stand for mutiny. I'm like, you owe your brother that. You owe Daemon that because Daemon wouldn't be in this situation if you didn't come to him. So Corlys kind of owe him respect.
Killing on Dragonstone. He doesn't have to be. And plus, in this episode, we get him officially crowned as the king of the Stepstones.
Oh yeah. And this is where the show gets real cool for me. Like I said, y'all can talk about in the comments. Y'all can talk. We about to wrap up. So if you want to talk about Alicent, anything in the comments, remember to just go to the comments, put whatever you want to talk about, and we'll talk about it with you before we get up there. But the night comes up. Daemon comes up. He sits cool, takes his helmet off. The king's people come. They give him a letter. We don't read it. He beats the door. He just start beating it.
Kills the messenger.
Yeah, he really killed the messenger. To be honest, my brother didn't come to help me for 3 years after I've been fighting this war. I've been like, then he basically saw the plan. He goes with the plan. He walks out by himself, gets in a boat, like my Skyrim character, like a dragonborn from Skyrim. Because I can't even, the Elden Ring don't even do this, where you have 40 people you fight by yourself. You just go out there. By the way, it's Skyrim if you mod it, of course. He goes out there on a boat, travels over there by himself, pretends like he surrenders, pulls a knife out, stabs him, and just goes to war solo. They shoot arrows, everything, and he don't care. He just going. And I don't think he didn't even tell nobody his plan. Shout out to Rhaenyra for actually like, yo, listen, this dude going out here, let's go help him. He doing our plan anyway. We didn't even know he was doing it. But Rhaenyra like, yo, I'm going with it. Because Rhaenyra seemed to have respect for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rhaenyra, I like the way that they're doing Rhaenyra. And he's going to become a much more prominent figure going forward. But I feel like this was a good show of strength with him and Sea Smoke.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't say about he raised a white flag, which means surrender, and put his sword up like this and held it over his head. He went to war. All of a sudden, you see Rhaenyra's dragon come out. We finally see Dracarys, which is cool too. We finally get to see Dracarys, and they fighting out here. Prince Duke.
I just want to say, Sea Smoke looks amazing. Like they did a really good job. The white scales, it was dope. My bad, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no problem. Daemon comes out. I mean, we see Prince Duhan, basically the Crab King. He walks into the shovel just like he do while they fight. He likes to run away. As we can see when he gets a little trouble. Like, I'm finna go in here. Daemon said, "Oh no, I'm going in solo dolo." They still fighting. You see Corlys out there bashing people's heads in. I saw one of Corlys' people come out there and his head just came off with a sword that came out of nowhere. and you just saw a head flying. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. And all of a sudden, at the end of the episode, my boy Daemon comes out with a cut up half body with the guts spilled out. A Prince Duhan walking with blood all over.
I like the way that they changed that too. That was another change that I could get behind, because in the books, he just cuts off the Crabfeeder's head, and I feel like just him bisecting him and then dragging out his torso like it was a suitcase. Fire.
The imagery is beautiful. They come out, they do what they do. Like I said, you see his guts hanging out. He's holding him by the hair, just dragging him, and then he just sits there and looks. And you see the first person, you see his Corlys looking at him. You see all the blood on the side of his face. And it's looked like Rhaenyra did, except for a little more. His hair is like pulled down, like you could tell he had a fight with Duhan. It wasn't just an easy win. Because he came in there looking a lot nicer, even though he did get them arrows, did pale him a little bit, but he looked a lot nicer when he came out. But he came out, basically that's the end of the war. He just killed the king, and this actually happened a lot.
In on sea smoke and cleans them niggas up, and
I'm glad to see Rhaenyra actually. That made me so happy to see him show what he can do. Because I was wondering how fast they was gonna get through it. And I was wondering if they was gonna go through all the slow motion build up, but they're like, we got a lot of extra expedition that we can go through.
Yeah, they added in a lot of stuff that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. I'm pretty sure I said it last episode. Just the way that they're pacing, I can understand how they sort of just, because even though the War of the Stepstones was this big part, it's really just a smaller narrative building thing. So I know there's going to be some people who have that exact thought, like, how do you clean up this big war in one episode? But just so everybody knows, this might be of all the battles that are in Fire and Blood, this might be the smallest one. So there's still plenty of battles to come.
It's a lot to do. All right, we appreciate y'all. If y'all got anything to say, we're about to get out here. Tori, where can they find you?
AfroComedy765 on all platforms. That's where I be at, talking crazy about all kinds of random stuff. Of course, you can find me here over on 99. Just being my scumbaggy self. You already know.
Yeah, and you can find me in the link tree below, 99 Scozelma. You can find me over on 99 Media. I appreciate y'all. Peace.